What is up, my cutouts? Cardboard Ninja here, coming at you with more changes coming from the test server. Looks as though a little bit ago they released some information about how they are going to update damage pass-through in the future. And it's a big update. Well, it's not necessarily an update, as they're saying that it's not coming soon. Obviously, they're saying it's not final, but they're also saying that the next update, it will not contain these changes. They're just dicking with a lot of stuff. So they're not mad at pass-through armor, and they're like, no, we just don't, like, want this anymore. They want consistency. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. Whether or not they're trying to get rid of screen armor or not isn't really important. So what are they adding? They're adding something called piercing coefficient. Oh my god, my fucking head. What's a piercing coefficient, you might ask? Great question. I'll just read it to you and then explain it if it isn't clear enough. During the first testing of projectiles, etc., the projectiles exploded when they used up 100% of their bullet damage. And, yeah, this meant that it dealt 100% of its firearm damage to parts, and then, exploded afterwards. So if you had a bullet that did 100 bullet damage and then exploded, it would do 100 bullet damage and explode. This allowed your bullets to pass entirely through vehicles if you hit something that was very, very small, and then the explosive component never happened. This basically led to overpenetration. And so now they're like, wait a minute, overpenetration bad. Squint, I'm just squinting at this. So what they're doing is, think of it kind of like a fuse. In this instance, they're showing off the feature of 60% of a piercing coefficient. So what this means is that if your weapon did 100 bullet damage and then exploded after that, instead it's going to explode after 60 bullet damage is dealt. Yeah, there it is. That's as simple as that is, I guess. Yeah, I think that's it. They're also saying that the presence of this parameter, you can understand if the global changes in projectile, I think they meant in the global changes in projectile damage, the removal of the 2 meter limitation applied to your weapon as well. If you don't see this parameter, then your weapon was not affected. So what they're saying is this. Not every weapon is going to be, they're making Crossout very complicated. It's a great way of putting this. Long story short, blast weapons and weapons that basically just cannons. This is just cannons, effectively. They're saying the 2 meter rule isn't going to apply for cannons, but they're increasing it to the 3 meter rule for everything else. Basically, instead of 7 pins, it's going to 10 pins. Yeah, basically. That's kind of stupid. They're doing this because of performance, they're claiming, because, trying to track bullets that are passing through so many different parts is apparently too difficult. But, I mean, you can't see me raising an eyebrow and shrugging, but it's like, it doesn't seem that's the case. Additionally, they're changing structural parts. So, lunatics, fire starters, engineers, etc., they all have their own parts, but now they have 20 points of damage resistance, 20 points of percentage damage resistance as features. Anybody who's seen my damage resistance / damage protection video, this is effectively damage blocking, to every single part. That is not a bumper. And that 20 points of protection is divided however they see fit. So, for example, the nomads and the lunatics are going to have 12 and 10% bullet damage resistance on their parts, irrespectively. And Steppenwolves are going to have blast, firearm, and energy resistance. And fire starters will have a massive amount of thermal resistance, as will Hyperborea. Engineer parts are going to have a general amount of damage resistance. I'm surprised they didn't damage blocking. I'm surprised they didn't do just 5, 5, 5, and 5, but 6, 4, 6, 4, and so on and so forth. So this means that the part itself, not your cabin, but the part itself, will actually have individual amounts of damage blocking based on the faction. This was actually, in addition to that, they're increasing the durability of all of the lighter parts. So, yeah, so the lighter the faction, the greater percentage bonus. So basically, the long story short is lunatic parts are getting extraordinarily buffed, because as we all know, lunatics give the best mass to durability ratio in the game. They're improving that, basically. Right now, it's like 49.9 something percent for typical lunatic parts. Some lunatic parts exceed that, and they go into the 50 something percent, etc. A couple of the bumpers actually go into the 80%. So now they're going to be making every single part for the lunatics actually have significantly more durability. Now, this is most likely due to the fact that the damage pass-through change is happening, and light cabins will have no chance of surviving without more durability. So that would make sense, because most of the time, light cabins, hovers, they can't actually fit heavy parts onto their builds in general. Like, if you struggle to get to that 80 part limit using just pass-through parts alone nowadays. So they're basically buffing the lighter parts. So lunatics, fire storage engineers are getting a durability increase because of the fact that you won't have any hit points. But in addition to that, they're going to have 12% bullet resistance on lunatic parts. That isn't terrible. Frames, they're doing a little switchy with frames. They're increasing the durability of frames by, I think it's 75%. So the durability of all frames, no, I'm sorry, they're multiplying the durability of all frames by 2.5 times. But they're reducing the amount of damage pass-through on the parts. And this is because of the fact that with infinite pass-through, you can't protect anything under your car, basically. So they're saying the durability of all frames has been increased by 2.5 times. On the contrary, the lets damage through and resistance to melee damage were reduced to 75% and 25% respectively. So lets damage through used to be 90%, now it's 75%, and melee was 50%, now it's down 25%. They think that this is going to keep the frames equally durable in respects to how much damage it takes to destroy the frames. But again, this is just to help prevent damage passing through and blowing up all of your stuff under your car. Honestly, that's probably not going to be enough. Cannons are probably going to rip right on through that. They've increased the durability of many weapons. This is getting just crazy, by the way. Cannons are all over the place. I need to make a video on how crazy cannons are. But cannons and turret cannons, the blast damage is being reduced by 10%. This value has been transformed to the projectile firearm damage to save damage to a single part. Oh my freaking god. So, once again, I need to make a video on this, but presently in Crossout Live, all cannons do damage split between bullet and blast. It was initially, and is no longer, 60-40, 40-60. 60-40 bullet blast for linear cannons, 40-60 bullet blast for turreted cannons, but certain cannons do not have that. For example, the Executioner actually has an increased amount of bullet damage because they just decided to increase it by like 10%, so it's actually off. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 65%, 35%, 36% for the Executioner, and so on and so forth. There's all sorts of wonkiness now in place with cannons, and they're doing that even more. So basically, instead of it being 60-40, 40-60, it's going to be 70-30, 50-50. That's basically what they're swapping the bullet blast coefficient for on cannons for whatever reason, and then of course combine that with their damage piercing crap. Firearm damage for all rocket launchers has been removed. This includes the yokai. I believe they did this because this means that rockets no longer will penetrate pass-through parts. They will detonate on impact. Interesting. I'll check that on the test server, don't worry. Median has damage reduced by 11%. The Kaiju, which was just straight buffed for no reason, they're reverting that. Remember that, like, patch or so ago, they were like, hey, yeah, we're going to increase the burst length of the Kaiju. We're doing this because we want to make it harder for you to deal damage with the Kaiju. And the only thing that did was buff the Kaiju, just flat, dead ass, make it stronger. Yeah, they're reverting that. They're like, whoops, what were we thinking? You're just shooting them with the extra bullets for bonus damage. What? It's doing well over 1,200 damage now every single Astreus. Projectile speed reduced by 20%. I don't know why they would do that. Prosecutioner and Executioner. Oh, great. Do you remember what I said about the Executioner already being wonky enough? Here we go again. Aw, shit. Here we go again. Explosion radius reduced by 33%. They're claiming with the new mechanics, the recently increased radius turned out to be redundant. In other words, too good. It's not redundant. It's too good. The mechanics of the Prosecutioner Executioner perks works in such a way that the first two pins of the part being pierced by the projectile were taken into account, the durability of the pierced parts, and therefore without loss of damage. I think that there's a typo in there, but anyway, then the calculation of the durability of the destroyed parts begins according to the general principle, etc. Yeah, so this explains why you can fire through someone's build and it come out the other side effectively. While it's saying the first two pins of parts, it doesn't matter if you have a 2, 3, 4, or 10 pin part. The projectile is going through that one part. It ignores the first 2 pins, but if that second pin is within the first part being pierced, it will pierce that entire part and then start after that part. That's basically it. Scorpion, this is the same stuff that it said before. Basically, this caps the damage that the Scorpion can deal to, I think it's 400 or 599 damage. But that said, it's not a nerf. Anyone who's dicked around on the test server for any period of time knows this is not a nerf to the Scorpion. This is actually a massive buff, because in live servers, well, you can do 1 point of damage with 2 Scorpions. You can fire down range, hit someone directly, and do single point of damage, and you're like, damn it, what the hell, why did my Scorpion do nothing? It's because that yield 7-pin rule. Without the 7-pin rule, this will go right on through. This is, in general, it is a massive buff to the Scorpion because of the fact that the way that damage mechanics work right now is heavily favored against the Scorpion. The impulse of crossbows is now being applied to the first point of contact. This means that even if you hit a pass-through part, the impulse happens there and not technically nowhere. So the idea is if you overpinned with a crossbow on the previous test server, you didn't actually pass impulse onto their vehicle at all. It just went right on through. And so they're changing it, so now if you hit the front, it'll hit there. The Skinner, as well as Cap Cannon Jiboku, will no longer shoot through pass-through parts. And basically hit nothing as well, so that's another thing. This is the part that I mentioned earlier where the 2 meter, the 7-pin rule is going to still apply. They're just making it the 10-pin rule because they're saying, as we noted earlier, you cannot remove the 2 meter limitation from such weapons without significant performance losses. And this comes down to the hit scan weapons, machine guns and shotguns and so on and so forth. So they're not going to remove the 7-pin rule for this. So in order to reduce the effectiveness of parts that pass damage through relative to these weapons, the limitation is increased up to 3 meters. That's, again, the 10-pin rule now. What are you doing, guys? What are you doing? You're not getting rid of spaced armor. Anyway, during mass testing, we'll evaluate the changes in performance and the load on the server. If the changes in performance turn out to be acceptable, the increased restriction will be added into the game along with the new mechanics. Meaning, if hit scan weapons don't make the game suck, with the 10-pin rule, then the 10-pin rule will go in. But they're claiming that hit scan weapons with no limitation was just too much for the servers. Hovers, the Icarus 7s now fly lower and at 90 kilometers an hour, but more tonnage. So, oh, and also hovers, I think this is all hovers, they're removing the bonus damage to the side. So remember my video that points out that hovers take bonus damage if you hit them on the side? Yeah, that's going away. Explosive modules. This means all explosive modules, such as generators, ammo packs, etc. Less damage. The damage dealt by explosive modules is just reduced by 20%. And the explosion impulse, the thing that knocks you around, is also reduced. This is likely because of the fact that you can't stop bullets and cannons from piercing your build and blowing up your high explosives anymore. So they're like, whoopsie, this'll just kill you. The RS1 Ruby, RD1 Listener, and RD2 Keen radars, as well as all decor parts, are now going to once again stop blast damage. So this is a thing that was set up where they basically were like 100% pass-through parts for blast damage. This is because people are using nothing but decor parts or radars to basically make radar vehicles or decor vehicles, because decor has the best mass to durability ratio of any part, and so people were just using that to protect themselves because it was better than any actual part that you could bring. They're reverting that. They're letting that happen again, but no more radar armor, because you can no longer have more than one Ruby, Listener, or Keen on your vehicle at any given point in time. This is huge, by the way. The cabin change. Reduce the influence of mass on acceleration of light and medium cabins, starting with the rare ones. So basically, rare and above. So this is huge. So for those of us who don't remember, there was a great nerfing very recently. Not very recently, maybe 6 months ago or so. Maybe 8 months. It doesn't really matter. Every single cabin caught a speed nerf. Every single one of them. So the top speed in the game went down from 105 kilometers an hour to 100 kilometers an hour. Every light cabin went from 100 kilometers an hour down to 95 kilometers an hour. The Torero ate a nerf went down from 100 kilometers an hour down to 90 kilometers an hour, and so on and so forth. So what does this matter? We get it, Cardboard Ninja. Everything's slower. No. What you don't get is acceleration in Crossout is heavily based on cabin top speed. It's the #1 contributor to your cabin's acceleration, how fast you get up to speed. #1 thing that determines that, your cabin's base top speed. Not modified by like Phobos, not modified by any engine, not modified by the Sabbath wheels. No. Your base top speed is the largest determining factor of your acceleration. And along those lines is your mass. Your mass also determines how fast you accelerate. And so presently in Crossout, once they cut everyone's base top speed by 5 kilometers an hour, everything started performing like crap. So you'll note that only some cabins, certain light cabins, actually have a lot of get up and go and a lot of acceleration, and other light cabins, even though they're light cabins, don't. And that differentiation comes down to the 95 kilometer an hour to 100 kilometer an hour line, because once you're at 95 kilometers an hour, you're technically, according to the game's mechanics, not a light cabin anymore, because that's originally where that line was made. And so they're making it so we get to the actual change, which is to reduce the influence of mass on acceleration of light and medium cabins. They're giving some of the speed back. They're not giving the top speed back, but they're giving back a lot of the acceleration. And this can be seen in the Bat cabin. And was a while ago the Kami cabin. The Kami got the inverse of this. The Kami got the nerf. They basically said they increased the amount mass affects the Kami cabin, bringing its top speed, because the Kami had 100 kilometers an hour top speed. They brought it in line with the 95 kilometer an hour vehicles. So they're making all things that are not heavy cabins a little bit better in acceleration. The scatter mechanics when moving. This is bloom. So you know how when you move, your crosshairs get wider and you get less accurate? Well, right now in Crossout it's binary. Either you are moving or you are not. If you are moving, then you get a set amount of crosshair bloom. You get a set amount of inaccuracy that you can't stop. If you are completely still, that goes away. Well, they're going to make this, they're putting this on a sliding scale. So now instead of it being binary, you are moving or not, you're either moving at a certain speed or not, basically. So now you gain more weapon inaccuracy as you accelerate, instead of it being, oh, you're moving at all, you have maximum weapon inaccuracy. And here's how you get to the test server, etc., etc., etc. And so we're going to swap over to the test server right now. Let's log on in. And so here we are on the test server. We're going to take a look at all these things that everyone is talking about. We're going to first take a look at the cannon mechanics. And this only goes on to weapons that have bullet and blast. Nothing else has it. Whirls, pure bullet. Whirlwinds, pure blast. Doesn't have that piercing mechanic. The avalanche, if you note down right there, it says under max ammo, it says the word features. This thing will explode. It will detonate the cannon at 10% of the bullet damage. Executioner is going at 10%. Little boy is going at 80%. So you have a lot of pass through on the little boy. Very interesting. You have 60% on judges. Still wins or pull it pure blast, so they don't have it. That's weird. Where? And mammoths are doing this at 80% as well. Grab the gift, which allows us to take a look at all of the cannons. Mastos are at 80%, Typhoons are at 60%. So basically, linear cannons have so much more bullet damage than blast damage. That's the reason why they have a much lower threshold to detonation. Hence the reason why you're looking at 60% and you're looking at 10% and things like that. The reason why the Executioner is at 10% is because the fact that it has its 2 pins of piercing. Before, it had its 2 pins of piercing, and then it had 104 damage that it had to deal to actually detonate. Well, now it's going to have its 2 pins of piercing, or ignoring the first part hit or whatever, and then it's going to go to 10%. So 10 damage. It basically blows up right after its 2 pins of piercing. Same thing with the Prosecutor, sitting at that sweet 10%. Yeah, other than that, we also have the change to all parts. And as you'll note, anything that already had a damage reduction didn't change. So King of Birds, the Gessen, the ye old Train Plow, as you'll note, they only have their 90% damage blocking feature on contact AE melee damage. But as you can see, APC Roof Part now features bullet, blast, and energy resistance. The truck door now has bullet and blast resistance. and so on and so forth. The power slide, which already featured 25% pass-through, doesn't have any new damage features because it already had pass-through. Excavator hood, 668 on bullet blast and energy. Pole position wouldn't have any changes. 6%, 14% on blast and energy because it is Dawn's Children, and so on and so forth. This is that change that they were saying is coming in. So now you can actually protect your parts, or protect parts of your vehicle to a greater degree against things that you kind of want to defend it against. That's pretty neat. Anything that's passed through is still passed through. Let's mosey on down to the frame. The frame is now, as I said, 25%, 75%, but the durability has been dramatically increased. I think that gave me access to every cabin, didn't it? It did. Oh yeah, and also 11 energy, hot reds, and so on and so forth. But that's already in-game. That's just something I hadn't spoken about. I don't think that... Oh yeah, that's right. Icarus 7s now have 900 tons, up from 700, but only a 90 kph top speed. This is the eternal bobbling around. They just don't know where they want Icarus 7s to be. They're like, I don't know where we want this thing to be. Do we want it to be super fast? Do we want it to be like extremely fast? They don't know. So Icarus 7s caught a very slight nerf buff. So basically you'll have heavier hovers and they're going to be lower to the ground, which is basically returning them back to where they were initially, way back in the day. Which is prior to them raising the Icarus 7s way off the ground, I believe. Yep. We're back down to standard hover height, what it used to be before they decided to make all those changes, and so on and so forth. But yeah, there you go. You guys can hop on the test server, give it a try. All these changes are here. We've got all the damage pass-through going on. Yeah, that's it. That's all more or less I wanted to show you, so... Thank you for your time. It's going to be a wild one. Peace.